I paid $300,000 for my daughter's fairy tale wedding in Paris, and I did it with a smile. I booked the chateau. I paid for the vintage wine. I even paid for the first-class tickets for her and her fiancé, Jean-Luc. I was sitting at my desk with a glass of cheap scotch, celebrating the final transfer, when my computer pinged. It was an email from my daughter, Vanessa. The subject line read, "Important Wedding Update." I opened it, expecting a thank you note, or maybe a photo of the flower arrangements. Instead, I read the words that killed the father inside me. The email said, "Dad, please do not come to Paris. Jean-Luc and I have discussed this, and your presence will be a problem. You do not speak French, and quite frankly, your blue-collar mannerisms will embarrass me in front of the Laurent family. They are nobility, Dad. They are sophisticated. You are a truck driver. We will tell everyone you are sick. I canceled your plane ticket. Please just send the rest of the money for the catering. We love you, Vanessa." I stared at the screen. I did not cry, I did not scream. I just took another sip of my scotch and felt a coldness settle in my chest that was heavier than any engine block I ever hauled. I looked at the transfer confirmation on my screen. $150,000 pending. My finger hovered over the mouse. I did not hesitate. I clicked Cancel Transaction. Then I picked up my phone and dialed the fraud department of my bank. I told them to freeze the black card I had given my daughter. The next morning I woke up to 36 missed calls and a voicemail that sounded like a banshee screaming. Before I tell you how I destroyed their little fantasy world, please hit the like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you would let your family treat you like an ATM. Now let me tell you exactly what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. The silence in my house that night was heavy. It was the kind of silence that usually comes after a funeral. In a way, I suppose it was a funeral. I was mourning the death of the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. I sat there in my leather recliner, the leather worn and cracked, just like my hands, and I stared at the digital clock on the cable box. It was midnight. The email was still open on my laptop screen. The light from the monitor was the only illumination in the room, casting long shadows against the walls I had paid for, the roof I had kept over her head, and the life I had built from nothing. I read the line again. "You are a truck driver." She wrote it with such disdain, as if it were a dirty word, as if the millions of miles I had logged on the interstate to pay for her private schools and her equestrian lessons and her art degrees meant nothing. She was right about one thing. I am a truck driver. I started with one rig 30 years ago. I slept in the cab. I ate out of cans. I showered at truck stops. I saved every dime while my friends were buying new cars. Now I own the biggest logistics fleet on the East Coast. My net worth is north of $50 million. But Vanessa does not know that. She knows I own trucks. She knows I have money. But she thinks I am just a manager who got lucky with a few contracts. She thinks I live in this modest 3-bedroom house in New Jersey because it is all I can afford. She does not know I own the block. She does not know I own the building her fiancé lives in. She does not know that the only reason she floats through life on a cloud of luxury is because I hold the strings. And she wanted to cut those strings. No, she wanted to keep the strings attached to my wallet, but cut the strings attached to me. She wanted the fruit, but she wanted to chop down the tree because the bark was too rough for her delicate hands. I looked at the transfer screen again. Status canceled. The words were beautiful. It was the first time in 28 years I had said no to her. When she was 5 and wanted a pony, I bought her lessons. When she was 16 and wanted a BMW, I bought her a sensible sedan, and she cried until I upgraded it. When she was 22 and wanted to find herself in Italy for a year, I paid the rent. I created this monster. I knew that. I sat there drinking my scotch and accepting my blame. But acceptance does not mean submission. I picked up my phone again. It was 1 in the morning here, which meant it was 7 in the morning in Paris. Or maybe they were still in New York. I did not care. I dialed the number for the credit card concierge service. The operator answered on the first ring. Mr. Carter. How can we assist you this evening? I kept my voice flat. I want to report a compromise on the supplementary card ending in 4598. That is the card issued to Vanessa Carter. The operator asked if the card had been stolen. I said no. It has not been stolen. It is being used by an unauthorized person. That person is no longer authorized to spend my money. Please flag it as lost or stolen and decline all charges immediately. Effective now. The operator confirmed. Card blocked. I hung up. I finished my drink. I washed the glass in the sink. I turned off the lights. I walked up the stairs to my bedroom. My knees popped with every step. Years of jumping out of cabs and loading cargo. Years of hard labor so she could have soft hands. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I expected to feel guilty. A father should feel guilty for cutting off his child, right? But I did not feel guilt. I felt a strange sense of clarity. It was like driving through a heavy fog and suddenly breaking through to clear skies. I finally saw the road ahead, and it was going to be a bumpy ride for Vanessa. I slept like a baby. I woke up at 6 like I always do. Habit. You do not drive trucks for 40 years without an internal alarm clock that wakes you up with the sun. I went to the kitchen and started the coffee pot. The smell of cheap ground coffee filled the kitchen. Vanessa always complained about my coffee. She said I should buy an espresso machine. She said I should buy beans from Ethiopia. I like my coffee black and strong and cheap. I poured a mug and walked to the living room. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up. 36 missed calls, 50 text messages, 14 voicemails. The notifications were scrolling down the screen like a waterfall. They were all from Vanessa. I did not listen to the voicemails yet. I just scrolled through the texts. The first few were confused. Dad, the card isn't working. Dad, are you awake? Dad, call the bank. Then they got angry. Dad, pick up the phone. Dad. I am at the register. This is embarrassing. Dad, what the hell is going on? And the last few were pure venom. You are doing this on purpose. I hate you. You are ruining everything. I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted excellent this morning. My phone rang in my hand. It was her. I swiped green. I put the phone to my ear, but I did not say hello. I just listened. You old lunatic. She was screaming. She was screaming so loud the microphone was distorting. I could hear background noise, people talking, classical music. She was in a store with classical music. Vanessa, I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used when I had to fire a driver for drinking on the job. Calm. Final. Do not, Vanessa, me, she shrieked. I am standing in the middle of Dior. Do you hear me? Dior. I have the wedding dress on, the one we picked out, the one that costs $20,000. And the card was declined. The woman behind the counter just cut the card in half, Dad. She cut it in half. She said it was reported stolen. Everyone is looking at me. They think I am a thief. Fix this. Fix this right now. I took another sip of coffee. I imagined her standing there, probably surrounded by mirrors, surrounded by silk and satin, her face red. Her fiancé Jean-Luc probably pretending to look at a scarf to avoid the shame. I thought you were worried about embarrassment, Vanessa, I said. What are you talking about? Fix the card. Transfer the money. You sent me an email last night, I said. You said my presence would embarrass you. You said I am too uncultured. You said I am just a truck driver. There was a pause, a short one. Then she huffed. This is about the email. Dad, stop being so petty. We can talk about this later. Right now I have a sales associate looking at me like I am garbage. Pay for the dress. No, I said. What did you say? I said no. If I am too embarrassing to attend the wedding, then my money is too embarrassing to pay for the dress. A truck driver's money is dirty, Vanessa. It is covered in grease and diesel. It would stain that white silk. I am doing you a favor. I am saving you from the humiliation of being supported by a blue-collar man. Dad, stop it. You are being ridiculous. Jean-Luc is here. His mother is flying in tomorrow. We have the fitting. You promised. You promised to pay for the wedding. I promised to pay for my daughter's wedding, I said. But it seems I do not have a daughter. I have a critic. I have a judge. And since I am banned from the event, I assume I am banned from the invoices too. She started screaming again. Something about contracts. Something about how I owed her. Something about how I was ruining her big day. I hung up. I did not slam the phone down. I just tapped the red button. The silence returned to the kitchen. It was peaceful. But I knew it would not last. Vanessa was in New York. New York is a 90-minute drive from my house in New Jersey. If she was at Dior on Fifth Avenue, she would be in a car and heading my way within minutes. Jean-Luc would be driving. He drove that Porsche I paid the lease on. They would be coming for blood. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at my front lawn. I cut the grass myself. I fixed the fence myself. It was a modest house, a good house. It was the house she grew up in. The house where I put Band-Aids on her knees. The house where I helped her with her homework. And now she looked at this house and saw a shack. She looked at me and saw a wallet. I went to my safe in the closet. I spun the dial. Click, click, click. I opened the heavy metal door. I took out a file folder. It was a thick folder. Inside was the research my lawyer Richie had given me a week ago. I had not wanted to believe it then. I had thrown it in the safe and tried to forget it. Richie had told me, Bill, you need to read this before you sign the checks. I told him to mind his own business. I told him Vanessa was in love. I told him the Laurent family was legitimate. Richie was a good lawyer. He was also my best friend. We drove trucks together in the 80s. He went to night school. I bought more trucks. We both made it out of the mud. But Richie never lost his nose for a rat. And he smelled a rat in Jean-Luc. I opened the folder. I looked at the photos. I looked at the bank statements Richie had dug up. I looked at the truth about the chateau in Bordeaux. I looked at the truth about Jean-Luc's job. I looked at the truth about the Laurent family nobility. I closed the folder. I put it on the kitchen table. I sat down and waited. It took them 2 hours. I heard the engine first. The aggressive revving of a sports car engine that was trying too hard to sound important. I looked out the window. The silver Porsche pulled into my driveway. It scraped the bottom on the incline because it was too low. Good. Jean-Luc got out first. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first truck. He had on those loafers with no socks. He looked at my house with a sneer. He said something to Vanessa. I could not hear it, but I could read his body language. He was disgusted. Vanessa got out. She was still wearing makeup, but it was smeared. She had been crying. Not sad tears, angry tears. She marched up the walkway. She did not knock. She still had a key. I made a mental note to change the locks. The door flew open. They stormed into my living room like they were the police raiding a drug den. How dare you? Vanessa screamed. She threw her purse on my couch. My leather couch. The one she said smelled like old man. You stranded us, she yelled. The card was declined at lunch too. We had to use Jean-Luc's emergency cash. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? Jean-Luc stood behind her. He crossed his arms. He looked around my living room like he was afraid he might catch a disease from the furniture. "Mr. Carter," he said. His accent was thick, or at least he pretended it was. I had heard him speak perfect English once when he thought I was not listening. But around me, he played up the French aristocrat act. "Mr. Carter, this is unacceptable behavior. In my culture, we respect the family agreements. You agreed to pay. You cannot just withdraw your support because of a simple email. It is childish." I looked at him. I looked at his $3,000 suit. I looked at his manicured hands, hands that had never changed a tire, hands that had never held a wrench. "Sit down," I said. "I will not sit down," Vanessa shouted. "I want you to unfreeze the card right now, and I want you to wire the catering money. And I want an apology, a big one. You ruined my fitting." I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold now. I said, "Sit down." My voice was not loud, but it had the rumble of a diesel engine in it. It was the voice that made union leaders sit up straight. Vanessa paused. She looked at me. She saw something she did not recognize. She saw the CEO, not the dad. She sat on the edge of the armchair. Jean-Luc remained standing. He tapped his foot. "You sent me an email," I said. "You banned me from your wedding." "It is not a ban," Jean-Luc said. He waved his hand dismissively. "It is a strategic decision. The wedding is a high society event. My family, the Laurents. We have a reputation. We have senators coming. We have dukes coming. Vanessa loves you, but let us be honest, Mr. Carter. You are a simple man. You tell loud jokes. You drink beer from the bottle. You do not speak a word of French. You would be uncomfortable. We are doing this for you. For me." I asked. "Yes," Vanessa said. She leaned forward. "Dad, you know you hate these things. You hate dressing up. You hate fancy food. You would be miserable. We are just letting you off the hook. You can stay here. You can watch the live stream. We will set up a special camera just for you. You can have your beer and your recliner, and you can be happy. And we can have our perfect day without worrying about you saying something stupid to the Count of Monte Cristo or whoever." I looked at her. My daughter. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike in this driveway. I remembered her crying when she scraped her knee. I remembered telling her she was a princess. "So I am an embarrassment," I said. "You are just different," she said. "You are blue-collar dad, and that is fine. For here, for New Jersey. But this is Paris. This is the Laurents. They trace their lineage back to the kings. You trace your lineage back to a coal mine in Pennsylvania. It is just oil and water." I looked at Jean-Luc. He was smirking. A small, arrogant smirk. He thought he had won. He thought I was a stupid old man with a checkbook and an inferiority complex. I looked at the folder on the table, the folder with the truth about his lineage. "Okay," I said. "Okay what?" Vanessa asked. "Okay, I understand," I said. I leaned back in my chair. I rubbed my face with my hand. I let my shoulders slump. I made myself look smaller, older, defeated. "You are right," I said. "I am just a trucker. Woo. I do not belong in a castle. I do not want to ruin your big day." Vanessa let out a breath. She smiled. It was the smile of a predator who just saw the prey limp. "Exactly, Dad. I knew you would understand. It is for the best." "So you will fix the card?" Jean-Luc asked. I looked at him. I looked at his shoes. "I need a few days," I said. "A few days," Vanessa snapped. "We do not have a few days. We leave for Paris on Friday. I need to move some money around." I lied. "I canceled the transfers." It takes time to reverse it. The bank flagged the account for fraud because I was angry. I have to go down there personally. I have to sign papers. It is a process. How long? Jean-Luc demanded. 2 days, I said. Give me 2 days. I will fix the money. I will pay for the catering. I will pay for the dress. And you will stay here? Vanessa asked. I will stay here, I said. I will not come to Paris. I will not embarrass you. Jean-Luc clapped his hands together. Good. This is sensible. This is the right decision, Mr. Carter. You are showing wisdom. Vanessa stood up. She grabbed her purse. Okay, 2 days. But I need cash now, Dad. The card is dead. I have appointments. I need cash. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out my money clip. I had about $200 in 20s. I tossed it on the table. That is all I have on hand, I said. She looked at the pile of bills like it was a dirty tissue. $200. That won't even pay for lunch. It is what I have, I said, until I go to the bank. She snatched the money. Fine, whatever. Just fix the transfer. We have the final walkthrough with the wedding planner on Thursday. If the money is not there, they will cancel the venue. I know, I said. I will take care of it. She walked to the door. She did not hug me. She did not say thank you. She just walked out. Jean-Luc followed her. He stopped at the door. He looked at me. You are doing the right thing, he said. Stick to what you know. Let us handle the world. He walked out. I heard the Porsche start up. I heard them drive away. I sat there in the silence. I looked at the empty space where my daughter had stood. I looked at the $200 she had taken. Stick to what you know, he had said. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was a wolf smile. I know logistics, Jean-Luc, I said to the empty room. I know how to move things from point A to point B, and I know how to shut down a supply line. I picked up the folder from the table. I opened it. I looked at the name of the bank in Paris where Jean-Luc claimed to have his family trust. I looked at the name of the real estate holding company that supposedly owned the chateau. I picked up my phone. I dialed Richie. Richie, I said. Yeah, Bill. He answered. He sounded like he was eating a sandwich. You were right, I said. I know I was right. About what part? About all of it. They just left. They told me I am too blue-collar for Paris. They told me to stay home and send the check. I heard Richie stop chewing. That little witch. What did you do? I told them I would fix it. I told them to give me 2 days. Why, Bill? Why give them 2 days? Cut them off now. No, I said. If I cut them off now, they just hate me and move on. They find another victim. They spin a story about how I abandoned them. I want to end this properly. What are you planning, Bill? I want you to book the jet, I said. The jet? You just said you aren't going. I lied. I said, I am going to Paris, Richie, but I am not going as the father of the bride. Who are you going as? I am going as the owner of the bank, I said. Richie laughed. It was a deep belly laugh. Oh, this is going to be good. When do we leave? Tonight, I said. Pack your best suit. We have a dinner reservation to crash. I hung up the phone. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. My daughter wanted a lesson in class. She wanted to talk about lineage and nobility and worth. I was going to give her a lesson. I was going to teach her that you do not judge a book by its cover, especially when that book owns the library. I went upstairs to pack. I did not pack a tuxedo. I packed my work boots. I packed my jeans. And I packed the single most dangerous thing I owned, my black Amex and a folder full of receipts. They wanted the truck driver. They were going to get the truck driver. but they forgot that a truck driver knows exactly how to run you over. I pulled my truck into the lot of Sal's diner about 20 minutes after Vanessa and Jean-Luc drove off in their leased Porsche. This was not a place where you would find French nobility. It was a place where you found grease coffee that tasted like battery acid and men who actually built this country. The neon sign buzzed with a dying flicker, and the air smelled of bacon grease and diesel fumes. To me, it smelled like home. To my daughter, it would probably smell like failure. I walked in and the waitress Brenda nodded at me without stopping her pour. She didn't ask what I wanted. She just pointed to the corner booth. Richie was already there. If you looked at Richie Banks, you would see a man in a faded flannel shirt with a mustard stain on the collar and knuckles that looked like they had been broken a few times. You would see a guy who looked like he fixed transmissions for a living. You would be dead wrong. Richie was the sharpest corporate attorney on the Eastern Seaboard. He had graduated top of his class from Yale Law, but he hated suits. He hated boardrooms. He preferred to do business here, eating a patty melt and drinking a Coke while he destroyed hedge fund managers over the phone. He looked up as I slid into the booth. The vinyl squeaked under my weight. "You look like you just got run over by your own fleet," Bill Ritchie said. He didn't even say hello. He just went straight for the throat. That is why I liked him. "I feel like it," I said. I signaled Brenda for a coffee. Richie pushed a manila folder across the sticky table. It slid over a patch of dried syrup. "Let's get the good news out of the way first," he said, chewing on a fry. "The acquisition of the Midwest distribution hubs is finalized. I twisted the arm of the seller's legal team this morning. They folded. You now control the shipping lanes from Ohio to Nebraska." I nodded, taking the folder. I didn't open it. I knew what was in it. "What is the valuation, Richie?" I asked. He wiped his mouth with a paper napkin. "With the new assets and the government contracts we locked in last month, your fleet is officially valued at $52 million. Liquid assets are sitting at around $8 million in the holding company. Personally, you are walking around with a net worth that puts you in the top 1% of the state. Congratulations, you old blue-collar bum. $52 million. I said the number quietly. It was just a number. It meant I had won the game of capitalism. I had started with a beat-up Ford and a dream, and now I was an empire. But sitting there with the echo of my daughter's voice still ringing in my ears, $52 million felt like pocket change. It could buy a fleet of trucks, but it couldn't buy her respect. "She doesn't know, does she?" Richie asked. He saw the look on my face. He knew me better than anyone. We had dug ditches together before he went to law school, and I bought my first rig. "No," I said. "She thinks I am a dispatcher. She thinks I manage the fleet, not own it. She thinks the house in Jersey is all I have. And you keep it that way." "Why?" Richie asked, pointing a fry at me. "Because you want her to be humble. How is that working out for you?" I took a sip of the coffee Brenda had dropped off. It was scalding hot. "It is not working out, Richie. She just banned me from her wedding." Richie stopped chewing. He dropped the fry back onto his plate. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. The lawyer came out. "The shark that ate CEOs for breakfast." "Repeat that," he said. His voice dropped an octave. "She banned me." I told him the whole story. I told him about the email, the black card, the visit to the house. I told him how Jean-Luc stood in my living room in a suit I paid for and told me I was too simple to be around his family. I told him how Vanessa said I was just a truck driver and that oil and water do not mix. Richie listened. He didn't interrupt. He just sat there, his face getting harder and harder. He clenched his jaw, the muscles working under his skin. "So let me get this straight," Richie said slowly. "You just paid $300,000 for a party you are not invited to, and you are letting them treat you like the help." I leaned forward. The table shook. "I am not letting them do anything, Richie. I told them I would fix it. I told them I would send the money in 2 days." You lied, Richie said. A grin started to spread across his face. A wicked, dangerous grin. I lied, I confirmed. I am not sending a dime. I am going to Paris, Richie, and you are coming with me. Richie laughed. It was a bark of a laugh that made a couple of truckers at the counter turn around. I knew it, he said. I knew you wouldn't take that lying down. So what is the play on we go there? We wave the bank statements in their faces, and we watch them grovel. That is too easy. If I just show them the money, they will apologize, sure. But it will be fake. They will love the $50 million, not the father. I don't want their fake love, Richie. I want to burn the fantasy down. I want to expose them. I tapped the folder Richie had given me earlier. The one about the business. You found out the logistics of the Midwest deal in 3 days, I said. You found the skeletons in the closet of a company that has been clean for 20 years. Richie shrugged. I am good at my job. I need you to be better, I said. I need you to dig into the Laurent family. Jean-Luc claims they are nobility. He claims they own a chateau in Bordeaux. He claims they are old money. Richie snorted. Old money doesn't lease a Porsche, Bill. Old money drives a 10-year-old Volvo and wears sweaters with holes in them. New money screams. Wealth whispers. Jean-Luc is screaming. Exactly, I said. My gut tells me he is a fraud. He talks too much about lineage. He drops names too often. And Vanessa is so blinded by the idea of being a princess that she is not checking the facts. I want a full dossier, Richie. I want to know where they bank. I want to know who holds the deed to that chateau. I want to know if Jean-Luc has ever held a job in his life. I want to know what color underwear they wear. I want to know everything. Richie pulled a small notebook out of his flannel pocket. He clicked a cheap plastic pen. I can have the preliminaries by tomorrow morning, he said. I have a contact in Zurich and another one in Lyon. If these people have debt, I will find it. If they have a criminal record, I will find it. If they are fake, I will peel them like an onion. Good, I said. And Bill, Richie said, looking up from his notes. What about the wedding? The contracts, I smiled. It was the same smile I used when I negotiated the union strikes in '98. You are the lawyer, Richie. You tell me. I signed the contract for the venue. My name is on the deposit for the catering. Legally, who owns that wedding? Richie's grin widened. You do. You are the client of record. So if I decide to change the guest list, I said, or if I decide to change the menu, or if I decide to turn the reception into a corporate retreat for my top drivers, that is my right. It is your party, Bill, Richie said. You can cry if you want to, or you can make them cry. I finished my coffee. I put a $20 bill on the table. Get me that information, Richie. We fly out tomorrow night. I want to walk into that rehearsal dinner armed to the teeth. Richie put the notebook away. He stood up and slapped me on the shoulder. His grip was strong. They messed with the wrong truck driver, Bill. We walked out of the diner into the cool night air. The parking lot was filled with 18-wheelers, their engines idling a chorus of power and industry. These were my people. This was my world. Honest work. Honest sweat. Vanessa wanted a fairy tale. She wanted a castle. She wanted a prince. I got into my pickup truck. I watched Richie get into his beat-up Ford Taurus. 2 men worth millions leaving a diner that smelled like grease. She was going to get her fairy tale. But she forgot that in the original fairy tales, the wolves eat the children who stray from the path. And I was done being the woodcutter who saves them. It was time to let the wolf out. It was 3 in the morning when Richie came back to my house. I had not slept. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the same empty coffee mug from the morning and a bottle of antacids. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like pressure building in a boiler. I heard Richie's Taurus pull into the driveway. The car door slammed. He did not knock, he just walked in. He looked tired. His eyes were red and he had loosened his tie. He was carrying a cardboard banker's box. Not a folder. A box. He dropped it on the table. The sound it made was heavy. It sounded like a judge's gavel hitting the bench. It sounded like a prison sentence. I looked at the box, and then I looked at Richie. "Is it bad?" I asked. Richie walked to the fridge. He took out a beer. He cracked it open and took a long drink. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Bill," he said, "it is not bad. Bad implies that there is some good mixed in. Bad implies a mistake. This is not a mistake. This is a catastrophe. This is a 5-alarm fire in a dynamite factory." He sat down opposite me. He tapped the lid of the box. "I woke up my contact in Lyon," he said. "I had to pay him double because it was a rush job. Then I called a guy I know who used to work fraud for Interpol. He owes me a favor from back when I got his nephew out of a DUI in Jersey. Between the two of them, we pulled the entire digital life of the Laurent family." He opened the box. It was packed with paper. Bank statements, property deeds, court documents, police reports. "Where do you want to start?" Richie asked. "Do you want the fake castle, the fake job, or the fake parents?" "Start with the castle," I said. "That is the selling point." Vanessa has not stopped talking about the ancestral home for 6 months. She showed me pictures. It has turrets. It has a vineyard. Richie pulled out a stack of papers clipped together. He slid them across the table. "Here is the deed," he said. Or rather, the lack thereof. "The Château de Saint-Michel does not belong to the Laurent family. It never has. It belongs to a hospitality holding company based out of Dubai. It is a wedding venue, Bill. A rental. You can book it on Expedia if you have enough points." I stared at the paper. It was a commercial lease agreement. "Jean-Luc told Vanessa it has been in his family since the 1700s, I said. "He told her the wine we are drinking at the reception comes from his grandfather's grapes." "Jean-Luc is a liar," Richie said. "The only thing his grandfather left him was a genetic predisposition for lying. The Laurents rent the place for 2 weeks every year to keep up appearances. They take photos. They host a party. They act like lords of the manor. Then they pack up their fake Louis Vuitton bags and go back to their real life." "And what is their real life?" I asked. Richie pulled out another stack. This one was thicker. It had red stamps on it. "Bankruptcy," he said. "Pierre and Genevieve Laurent filed for insolvency in 2019. They owned a chain of dry cleaning businesses in Marseille that were actually fronts for money laundering. The French government seized their assets. Their apartment in Paris, their cars, their accounts. They are destitute, Bill. They are living on credit cards they open in other people's names. They are bouncing checks across 3 different countries." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. My daughter was marrying into a crime scene. "And Jean-Luc," I asked. "What does the prince do?" Richie laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Jean-Luc is a consultant. That is what he tells people." "Do you know what he consults on?" I shook my head. "He consults the roulette wheel," Richie said. "He is a gambler, Bill. And not a good one. He is banned from 2 casinos in Monaco and 1 in Macau. He owes 180,000 euros to a private lender in Nice. These are not nice people, Bill. These are the kind of people who break kneecaps for interest payments." Richie slid a photograph across the table. It was a surveillance shot. Grainy and black and white. It showed Jean-Luc arguing with a man in a leather jacket outside a club. Jean-Luc looked terrified. I picked up the photo. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, but from rage. "So the wedding," I said. "The $300,000. Richie nodded slowly. He took another sip of beer. "You are a smart man, Bill. You know logistics. You know how to follow the money." Why were they so desperate for you to wire the funds directly to their account in France instead of paying the vendors directly? Why did they scream when you canceled the transfer? Because they are not paying the vendors, I said. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Exactly, Richie said. They need your 300 grand to pay off the loan shark in Nice. They need it to keep Pierre out of jail for tax evasion. They need it to keep the lights on in whatever rental apartment they are squatting in. The wedding is not a celebration, Bill. It is a heist. They are robbing you, and they are using Vanessa as the getaway driver. I stood up. I walked to the window. The sun was starting to come up. The sky was turning a bruised purple. I looked out at my quiet street. I thought about Vanessa. I thought about her arrogance yesterday. I thought about how she looked at my furniture with disgust. She is so stupid, I whispered. She thinks she is marrying a prince. She thinks she is elevating herself. She thinks she is leaving the truck driver behind to join the aristocracy. But she is just a mark. She is just a victim with a rich father. Richie stood up and came to stand beside me. She is a hostage, Bill. That is what she is. But she is a hostage who fell in love with the kidnappers. She is holding the gun to her own head. Does she know, I asked? Does she know any of this? Richie shrugged. I doubt it. Jean-Luc is charming. He is a con artist. That is his job. He probably showed her the fake deed. He probably took her to the rental castle and told her stories about his ancestors. She wants to believe it, Bill. That is the problem. She hates her background so much, she hates where she came from so much, that she will believe any fairy tale that promises to erase it. She is blinded by the shine. She cannot see the rot underneath. I turned back to the table. I looked at the box of evidence. It was a coffin. It was the coffin of my daughter's future. If I let her marry this man, she would be ruined. They would drain her accounts. They would leverage her credit. They would use her to get to me, and when the money ran out, they would discard her like a used tire. I have to tell her, I said. I reached for my phone. I have to call her. I have to show her this. Richie put his hand on my arm. He stopped me. Think about that, Bill. Think about the last 24 hours. She hates you right now. She thinks you are a jealous, petty old man who is trying to ruin her happiness because you are bitter. If you call her now and tell her that her prince is a pauper, she will not believe you. She will think you made it up. She will think you are sabotaging her. She will run straight into his arms and he will spin a story about how you are lying. He will say you hired people to forge these documents. He will turn her against you forever. I looked at Richie. He was right. He was always right. That was why I paid him the big retainer. So what do? I asked. Do I let her marry him? Do I let her ruin her life? No, Richie said. We go to Paris. We stick to the plan. You do not tell her. You show her. You show everyone. You wait until they are all in one room. You wait until the lies are stacked so high they are about to topple over, and then you kick out the foundation. I looked at the box again. I picked up a bank statement belonging to Pierre Laurent. It showed a balance of negative 14,000 euros. It showed charges for liquor stores and online gambling sites. These people called me simple, I said. My voice was low. They called me uncultured. They stood in my living room and told me I was not good enough to eat dinner with them. They are projecting, Bill Richie said. They are projecting their own failure onto you. They hate you because you are real. You have real money, real success, real dirt under your fingernails. They are ghosts, they are vapor, and they are terrified that you will blow them away. I sat back down. I pulled the box toward me. I started to read. I read every page. I read the foreclosure notices on the dry cleaning business. I read the police report from when Jean-Luc was arrested for writing bad checks in 2015. I read the emails between Genevieve and her creditors begging for more time. With every page, my sadness turned into something else. It turned into cold, hard resolve. Vanessa was my daughter. I loved her. But she was also a fool. She was a snob. She had let her vanity make her vulnerable. She had let her shame of me blind her to the danger in front of her. I could not save her with a warning. A warning was too soft. She needed a shock. She needed to see the monster without its mask. I closed the box. It was fully light outside now. The birds were singing. It was going to be a beautiful day in New Jersey. "Pack your bags, Richie," I said. Richie smiled. He finished his beer. "The jet is fueled and waiting at Teterboro," he said. "We can be in Paris by tomorrow morning." I stood up. I felt strong. I felt like I was back in the cab of my first truck hauling a double load through a snowstorm. I knew the road was dangerous. I knew the ice was slick. But I knew I had the horsepower to make it through. "I am not going to pay for the wedding," I said. "No," Richie said. "But I am going to pay for the lesson," I said. "And it is going to be the most expensive lesson they ever learned." I went to my bedroom. I opened my closet. I pushed aside the few suits I owned. I reached into the back and pulled out my old leather jacket, the one I wore when I started the company. It was beat up. It smelled like oil. Vanessa hated it. She said it made me look like a thug. I put it on. It fit perfectly. I looked in the mirror. I did not see a CEO. I did not see a millionaire. I saw Bill Carter, truck driver, father, and the man who was about to bring the hammer down. "We are going to Paris, Richie," I said. "And we are going to introduce the Laurent family to the concept of foreclosure." Richie grabbed the box. "I will drive," he said. We walked out to the truck. I did not look back at the house. The house was the past. Paris was the future. And I was bringing the storm with me. The drive to the airport was quiet. I thought about Jean-Luc's smirk. I thought about the way he looked at my shoes. I thought about how he called me Mr. Carter with that fake accent. He wanted a check. He wanted a bailout. He was going to get a reality check instead. I looked at the box in Richie's lap. That box was worth more than money. It was the truth. And the truth is the only thing that cannot be bought. Vanessa thought she was banning me from her wedding. She thought she was erasing me. She was about to find out that you cannot erase the man who built the road you are driving on. We boarded the jet an hour later. As we climbed into the sky, leaving New Jersey behind, I looked down at the sprawling highways, the arteries of commerce that I helped build. I ordered a whiskey. "To family," Richie said, raising his glass. "To family," I said, "and to taking out the trash." I drank the whiskey. It burned. It was good. Paris was waiting. The Laurents were waiting. They were probably laughing right now, drinking champagne they couldn't afford, toasting to the stupid American truck driver who was paying for their lifestyle. Let them laugh. Let them enjoy the champagne. It would be the last vintage they ever tasted, because Bill Carter was coming. And I was bringing the receipts, all of them. We touched down at Le Bourget just as the sun was setting over Paris. It was a gray, miserable sky that matched my mood perfectly. I watched the rain streak against the window of the Gulf Stream as we taxied to the private hangar. Richie was already on his phone barking orders to his team back in New York, ensuring every document was ready for the ambush. I just stared at the tarmac. This was the city of lights, the city of love, and I was here to declare war on my own flesh and blood. We checked into the peninsula. I did not care about the thread count of the sheets or the view of the Eiffel Tower. I cared about the secure Wi-Fi and the conference table in the suite. Richie set up his war room, immediately spreading out the dossiers on the Laurent family, like a general planning an invasion. I poured myself a drink. It was time to make the call. My hand felt heavy as I picked up the phone. This was the hardest part. I had to sell the lie. I had to make Vanessa believe that I was the beaten dog rolling over to show its belly. I had to make her believe that her insults had worked, that I was ashamed, that I was submissive. It went against every fiber of my being. I was a man who stared down union bosses and hostile takeovers. I did not submit. But for this trap to work, she had to believe she had won. I dialed her number. It rang 4 times. She was probably screening my calls, expecting me to be begging. Hello. Her voice was sharp, impatient. Vanessa, I said. I kept my voice low. Tired. Dad. She sighed. I told you I do not have time for this. We are at the venue. The florist is a nightmare. Unless you are calling to tell me the transfer went through, I am hanging up. I am in Paris, I said. There was a silence on the line. A long, cold silence. What? She hissed. You are in Paris. I told you not to come. I told you specifically that you are not welcome. Jean-Luc said it would be a disaster. Why can you not listen for once in your life? I am not here for the wedding. I lied. I forced the words out through grit teeth. I am not going to the ceremony, Vanessa. I respect your wishes. I know I would embarrass you. I know I am not cut out for your world. Then why are you here? She demanded. I am here to fix the money, I said. I told you the bank flagged the transfer. I had to sign the release forms in person because of the amount. And I brought the rest of it. The check for the catering. The check for the dress. Everything. I heard her breathing change. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with greed. The shark smelled blood in the water. You have the money, she asked. I have it, I said. But I cannot just hand it over, Vanessa. Richie is with me. Richie? Why is your lawyer there? Because this is a significant amount of capital, I said. I am transferring a large portion of my liquid assets to you as a wedding gift, but to do it tax-free to make sure the French government does not take 40% of it. We need to structure it as a family trust. A trust? She sounded suspicious. It is for your protection, I said. It secures the assets in your name. But there is a catch. What catch? Jean-Luc and his parents need to sign a waiver, I said. It is a standard document. It just states that they acknowledge the funds are a gift from me to you. It protects the money from creditors. It is a formality. Richie says we can knock it out in 20 minutes over dinner. I held my breath. This was the hook. If she bid on the money, she would swallow the hook. I do not know, Dad, she said. Jean-Luc's parents are very busy. They have fittings. They have social engagements. They do not want to have dinner with you. Tell them I am leaving tomorrow morning, I said. Tell them I just want to sign the papers, hand over the checks, and get back on the plane. I will not even stay for dessert. I just want to make sure my little girl is taken care of. I let my voice crack a little on the last part. It was a nice touch. She hesitated. I could hear her muffled voice talking to someone. Probably Jean-Luc. I heard the murmur of French. Then she came back on the line. How much is in the trust? She asked. $3 million, I said. I heard a sharp intake of breath. The number was big enough to bury her doubts. It was big enough to make the fake aristocrats salivate. Okay, she said. Her voice was suddenly sweeter. Fake sweet. Okay, Dad. We can do dinner. But it has to be tonight. And it has to be somewhere discreet. We do not want a scene. I have a reservation at L'Ambroisie, I said. 8 o'clock. L'Ambroisie. She sounded impressed. That is actually acceptable. Jean-Luc loves that place. It has 3 Michelin stars. I know, I said. Richie booked the private room. Just us. No witnesses, No embarrassment. Fine, she said. We will be there. But Dad, please, do not wear the leather jacket. Do not tell the story about the time you hauled manure to Kentucky. Just sign the papers and let us eat. I promise, I said. I will be invisible. I will be just a signature on a check. Good, she said. See you at 8. She hung up. I put the phone down on the table. My hand was shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. The trap was set. They were coming. They were coming for the $3 million. They were coming to sign the papers that they thought would secure their fortune. They had no idea that the papers Richie was preparing were not a trust. They were a confession. Richie looked up from his laptop. He had a printer running in the corner. It was churning out documents. They took the bait. He asked. Hook, line, and sinker, I said. They are coming to L'Ambroisie at 8. Richie whistled. L'Ambroisie? You really are going all out. That bill alone is going to be $5,000. It is the last meal of the condemned, I said. They might as well eat well. I walked over to the printer. I picked up the fresh pages. It was the prenuptial agreement Richie had drafted. But it wasn't a standard prenup. It was a document that detailed every single debt the Laurent family owed. It was a document that transferred liability. It was a document that, if read carefully, would reveal that I knew everything. But they wouldn't read it carefully. They would be too busy looking at the fake check for $3 million I was going to put on the table. They would be too busy drinking the vintage wine. They would be too blinded by their own greed to see the steel jaws of the trap closing around their legs. I went into the bathroom to shave. I looked at my face in the mirror. I looked old, tired. The last few days had aged me, but there was a fire in my eyes that I hadn't seen in years. It was the fire of the man who built an empire from the cab of a truck. I shaved closely. I trimmed my mustache. I walked back out and opened my suitcase. I did not take out the jeans. I did not take out the work boots. I took out the suit I had bought in New York 5 years ago for an awards dinner I never went to. It was a bespoke charcoal gray suit, Italian wool. It fit me like armor. I put on a crisp white shirt. I tied a silk tie. I put on the cufflinks Vanessa had given me for Christmas 10 years ago before she stopped buying me gifts. Richie whistled when he saw me. You clean up nice, Bill. You look like a senator. Or a hitman. Tonight I am both, I said. We left the hotel at 7:30. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, reflecting the streetlights. Paris was beautiful. It was a shame I was about to burn a hole in the middle of it. We took the hotel car, a black Mercedes. I sat in the back watching the city roll by. I saw couples walking hand in hand. I saw families eating in cafes. I wondered where I had gone wrong with Vanessa. I wondered if there was a moment I could have changed things. Maybe if I had been home more. Maybe if I hadn't spoiled her. But regrets are useless. You can't reverse a truck once you're on the highway. You just have to keep driving. We arrived at the Place des Vosges. The restaurant was tucked away, discreet, elegant. The kind of place where money whispers. The maitre d' greeted us. He knew who I was. Not because I was famous, but because I had bought the building 3 years ago through a shell company as a diversification asset. Richie had set it up. I had never even eaten here. But tonight, I was the landlord. Mr. Carter, the maitre d' said, bowing slightly. Your guests have arrived. They are in the private salon. Are they drinking? I asked. They have ordered a bottle of Romani Conti, 1990. Of course they have, I said. That is a $20,000 bottle of wine. They were celebrating spending my money before they even had it. Put it on my tab, I said. Let them drink. Richie and I walked through the main dining room. It was hushed, elegant. People were speaking in low tones, eating food that looked like jewelry. I felt big, clumsy, but I also felt powerful. We reached the heavy oak doors of the private room. I could hear laughter from inside. It was Jean-Luc's laugh, high, braying, mocking. I paused. I adjusted my cuffs. I looked at Richie. He nodded. He tapped the breast pocket of his suit where the documents were. "Showtime, Bill," he whispered. I pushed the doors open. The laughter stopped abruptly. They were sitting around a circular table covered in white linen. Jean-Luc, Vanessa, and two people who had to be Pierre and Geneviève Laurent. They looked exactly like their dossier. Pierre was wearing a suit that was too tight, his face flushed with wine. Geneviève was dripping in jewelry that I now knew was likely fake or insured up to its neck. Vanessa looked stunning. I have to admit that. She was wearing a white dress, her hair done up. She looked like the princess she always wanted to be. But when she saw me, her face fell. She looked at the suit. She looked at Richie. She looked confused. "Dad," she said. You look different." I walked to the empty chair at the head of the table. I did not smile. I did not offer a hug. "Good evening," I said. My voice was calm, controlled. Jean-Luc stood up halfway. He looked at my suit, then he looked at his parents. He seemed unsure. "Mr. Carter," he said, "we were just toasting to family." "Sit down, Jean-Luc," I said. He sat. I looked at Pierre and Geneviève. They were staring at me with a mix of curiosity and disdain. They saw the suit, but they still saw the truck driver. They saw the mark. "Vanessa," I said, "introduce us." She cleared her throat. "Mom. Dad. This is my father, William Carter, and his associate. This is Richard Banks," I said, "my general counsel." Pierre raised an eyebrow. "Counsel? Is that necessary for a family dinner? It is when we are discussing a trust of this magnitude," Richie said. He placed his briefcase on the table. He clicked the latches open. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Geneviève smiled, a tight, predatory smile. "Of course. We understand. Business is business. We are just so grateful, William, that you have decided to support the children. It is a noble gesture." She spoke English with a heavy accent. It sounded practiced. "It is not a gesture," I said. "It is an investment." I sat down. The waiter poured me a glass of the $20,000 wine. I didn't drink it. I just looked at it. "So," I said, "before we sign, before I hand over the check, I want to hear about the wedding. I want to hear about the family I am merging with. Tell me, Pierre. Tell me about the chateau." Pierre puffed up his chest. "Ah, the chateau. It is the jewel of the Laurent legacy. It has been in our family for 6 generations. The history is quite overwhelming." "I bet it is," I said. "And the vineyard. Producing the finest grapes in Bordeaux," he said. "We export exclusively to private collectors." I nodded. I looked at Jean-Luc. "And you, son, how is the consulting business?" Jean-Luc swirled his wine. "Booming," he said. "The markets are volatile. People need guidance. I have clients in Dubai, in London. I am turning away business, actually." Vanessa beamed. She looked at me like she was saying, I told you." "It sounds impressive," I said. "Very impressive. It is a burden sometimes." Geneviève sighed. "The responsibility of wealth, the maintenance of tradition. You Americans, you are lucky. You have new money. It is so much simpler. Old money. It is a heavy crown. I looked at Richie. He was struggling not to laugh. Well, I said, I want to help lighten that load. That is why we are here. Richie pulled the papers out of his briefcase. He placed a thick stack in front of me, and then he placed a single check on top of it. I saw their eyes go to the check. I saw Pierre lean forward. I saw Genevieve lick her lips. $3 million. It was right there, within reach. But first, I said, putting my hand over the check. The paperwork. Richie passed copies of the agreement to everyone. This is the trust agreement. I lied. It outlines the transfer of assets, and it includes the waivers I mentioned. It basically says that once this money is transferred, you accept it as the full and final contribution from the Carter estate. No future claims. No debts transferred to Vanessa. It separates her assets from yours legally. Jean-Luc waved his hand. Standard. Standard stuff. Where do we sign? He picked up a pen. He didn't even read the first page. Pierre put on reading glasses. He looked at the cover page. He frowned. This seems very thick for a waiver, he said. It is comprehensive, Richie said. We want to make sure everyone is protected, especially with international tax laws. Just sign it, Papa, Vanessa said. Please. The food is coming. Dad has to leave. Do not make this complicated. Genevieve nudged Pierre. Sign it, darling. We trust William. He is family now. Pierre hesitated. Then he shrugged. He flipped to the back page. I watched them. I watched the pen hover over the paper. I waited until the tip of the pen touched the signature line. Actually, I said. Pierre stopped. He looked up. There is one small detail I forgot to mention, I said. What detail? Jean-Luc asked. He was sweating. I picked up my glass of wine. I took a sip. It was good wine. Complex, full of notes of earth and blood. I looked directly at Jean-Luc. I forgot to ask about the rent, I said. The rent, Vanessa asked. What rent? The rent on the chateau, I said. Since it belongs to the Dubai Hospitality Group, and the rent on the apartment in Marseille, since the bank seized the property in 2019. The silence that fell over the room was instant. It was violent. Jean-Luc dropped his pen. It rolled across the table and fell onto the floor. Pierre took off his glasses. His hands were shaking. What are you talking about? Vanessa laughed nervously. Dad, you are confused. The chateau belongs to them. Does it? I asked. I signaled Richie. He reached into the box. The box we had brought from the hotel. He pulled out the deed. He pulled out the bankruptcy filings. He pulled out the police reports. He started dealing them out like playing cards. One in front of Pierre, one in front of Genevieve, one in front of Jean-Luc. This is the commercial lease for the castle, Richie said. This is the foreclosure notice for the dry cleaning business. This is the judgment for the 180,000 euros Jean-Luc owes to the gentleman in Nice. I watched their faces. It was like watching a building implode. The arrogance vanished. The nobility evaporated. All that was left was fear. Naked, ugly fear. Vanessa picked up the paper in front of Jean-Luc. She read it. Her face went pale. She looked at Jean-Luc. What is this? She whispered. It is a lie. Jean-Luc shouted. He stood up, knocking his chair over. This man, he is lying. He is trying to sabotage us. He forged these. Did I asked. I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number on speaker. "Who are you calling?" Genevieve shrieked. "I am calling the concierge at the chateau," I said. "Let us ask him who owns the place." Jean-Luc lunged across the table. He tried to grab the phone. "Sit down!" I roared. I slammed my fist onto the table. The plates rattled. The wine glasses shook. It was the truck driver coming out. The man who could change a tire in a blizzard. The man who wasn't afraid of a little French con artist. Jean-Luc froze. He sank back into his chair. "You are frauds," I said. My voice was low. "Dangerous. You are broke. You are liars. And you tried to sell my daughter a fairy tale to pay off your gambling debts." I looked at Vanessa. She was crying, silent tears running down her face. She was looking at the papers. She was looking at Jean-Luc. And for the first time in 6 months, she was seeing him. Really seeing him. "Dad," she whispered. "Is this true?" I looked at her. "It is all true, Vanessa," I said. "Your prince is a pauper, and your castle is a rental." I picked up the check for $3 million. I held it up so they could all see it. "And this," I said, "this is the only thing that was going to save you." I ripped the check in half. Then I ripped it again. I let the pieces fall onto the table like confetti. "The dinner is served," I said. "But I think I have lost my appetite." I stood up. Richie stood up with me. "We are leaving," I said. "Wait," Pierre stammered. "Wait, Mr. Carter. We can explain. It is a temporary liquidity issue. The assets are tied up. We can renegotiate." "There is nothing to negotiate," I said. "You wanted a truck driver. You got one. And this truck just ran you over." I turned to walk away, but then I stopped. I had one more thing to do. The final nail in the coffin. I turned back to them. "Oh," I said. "And one more thing." I looked at Vanessa. "The wedding is off," I said. "I canceled the venue this morning. I canceled the caterer. I canceled the florist." You what?" she gasped. "I canceled it," I said. "Since I am paying for it, I had decided to go in a different direction." "What direction?" Jean-Luc whispered. "I donated the deposits," I said, "to a trade school for mechanics in the Bronx. They are going to have a very nice graduation party." I buttoned my jacket. "Enjoy the wine," I said. "It is the last thing I am ever buying you." I walked out. Richie followed me. We left them sitting in the ruins of their lies. We left them with the papers and the torn check and the $20,000 wine that now tasted like vinegar. We walked out into the Paris night. It was still raining, but I didn't mind. The rain felt clean. It felt like it was washing away the dirt. I had destroyed my daughter's wedding. I had broken her heart. But I had saved her life. And as I walked toward the waiting car, I knew that the real work was just beginning, because now I had to pick up the pieces. I sat at the head of the table in the private salon of L'Ambroisie, and I felt like a lion watching a pack of hyenas circle a piece of meat. The room itself was an insult to my bank account. It was decorated with tapestries that were probably older than the United States. The chandelier above us dripped with crystal that caught the light and shattered it into 1,000 judgmental rainbows. The air smelled of old wood beeswax and the kind of heavy perfume that tries to cover up the scent of desperation. Pierre and Genevieve Laurent sat to my left. Jean-Luc and Vanessa sat to my right. Richie was next to me, his briefcase acting as a physical barrier between us and them. The waiter, a man in a tuxedo who looked like he had been born sneering, handed us the menus. They were heavy-bound in leather and completely in French. There were no prices. I opened mine. I knew exactly what I was looking at. I had spent 10 years running logistics for a shipping firm in Marseille back in the 80s. I spoke French better than I spoke corporate English. I knew the difference between a Bordeaux and a Burgundy. I knew that the Homard Bleu was Blue Lobster, and I knew it cost more than a week's pay for most of my drivers. But I held the menu upside down for a split second, just to see what they would do. I saw Genevieve nudge Pierre. I saw a small, cruel smile play on her lips. She leaned over to Vanessa. "He is holding it upside down," she said in French. Her voice was low, fast, and dripping with venom. "Look at him. He looks like a bear trying to read a map." Vanessa giggled. It was a nervous sound, but it was a giggle nonetheless. She didn't defend me. She didn't correct her. She just took a sip of water and looked away. I corrected the menu. I furrowed my brow. I tapped the page with a thick finger. "I cannot make heads or tails of this," I said loudly. My voice boomed in the quiet room. I made sure to sound as American as possible. "Do they have a burger on here, or maybe a steak? I like my steak well done." Jean-Luc covered his mouth with his napkin to hide his laughter. Pierre shook his head with exaggerated pity. "Mr. Carter," Jean-Luc said, smoothing his tie. "Please, allow me to order for you. This cuisine is complex. It requires a delicate palate. We would not want you to order something that might disagree with your constitution." "Go ahead, son," I said. I leaned back, letting the chair creak. "Order me the most expensive thing they have. I am paying for it after all." Pierre turned to Genevieve. He switched to French again. "He thinks money buys taste," Pierre said. "Look at his hands. They are scarred. He looks like a laborer who stole a suit. I cannot believe we have to break bread with this peasant." Genevieve patted Pierre's hand. "Patience, my love," she replied in French. "Just think of the wire transfer. Think of the check. Once the money clears, we never have to see this animal again. We will put him in a corner at the wedding and tell everyone he is a distant uncle who suffered a stroke." I smiled at them. A big, wide, clueless smile. "What are you folks talking about?" I asked. "It sounds fancy. French is such a romantic language." "We were just saying how generous you are," William Genevieve said in English. Her accent was thick, sweet, like rotting fruit. "We were admiring your suit. It is very robust." "Thank you," I said. I smoothed the lapel. "Got it on sale, 2 for 1. Richie kicked me under the table. He was enjoying this too much. He knew the suit was bespoke Italian wool, but he loved the theater of it. The waiter returned. Jean-Luc ordered for the table. He ordered the Blue Lobster. He ordered the truffles. He ordered caviar. He ordered a second bottle of the $20,000 wine. He ordered me the chicken. For the gentleman, Jean-Luc said to the waiter in French, "Bring the chicken, and make sure it is cooked thoroughly. He has the digestion of a child." The waiter nodded, not even looking at me. As the food arrived, the humiliation escalated. It became a sport for them. They would eat a bite of caviar moan with pleasure, and then launch an insult in French right to my face, assuming my ignorance was a shield. "This wine is wasted on him," Pierre said in French, swirling the ruby liquid in his glass. "He would be happier with a Budweiser. He probably thinks terroir is the name of a dog." Vanessa was drinking fast. She was on her 3rd glass. I watched her. I waited for her to stop them. I waited for my daughter, the girl I had raised to be strong and kind, to slam her hand on the table and say, "Enough." I waited for her to say, "That is my father, show some respect." But she didn't. She wanted to belong to them more than she wanted to belong to me. "Dad," she said, cutting into her lobster, "please try not to slurp your soup. The Laurents are very particular about table manners." I put my spoon down. I looked at her. "I am just enjoying the food, honey," I said. Genevieve leaned in. "You must understand, Vanessa," she said in English. Your father comes from a different world, a world of utility. Our world is one of refinement. It is not his fault. Then she switched to French, whispering to Vanessa. He eats like a pig at a trough. Look at him wiping the sauce with the bread. It is disgusting. How did you come from his loins? You are so delicate. He is a brute. Vanessa laughed. She actually laughed. I know, she replied in French. Her accent was terrible, clumsy American French, but I understood her. I try to teach him, but he is stubborn. He is just a wallet, really. Once we have the trust set up, we can distance ourselves. I do not want him around the baby when we have one. He will teach it bad habits. That was the dagger. That was the moment the last thread of connection snapped. She called me a wallet. She said she would keep my grandchild away from me. I tore a piece of bread from the basket. I wiped the sauce from my plate, making a show of it. I chewed with my mouth slightly open. I saw Pierre recoil in horror. This sauce is good, I said. Tastes like gravy. Pierre looked like he was going to be sick. I can't take this, he hissed in French to his wife. Hurry up with the contract. I want to get the check and leave. I need to wash the smell of him off my clothes. Richie cleared his throat. He looked at me. He tapped his watch. He was signaling that we had enough. We had the recording. I had my phone in my breast pocket recording every word of their defamation. But I wasn't done. I wanted to see how far they would go. I raised my glass. A toast, I said. They all looked at me. They picked up their glasses reluctantly. To family, I said, and to new beginnings. I know I am not the fanciest guy. I know I don't know which fork to use. But I want you to know that I appreciate you welcoming me. It means a lot to a simple trucker to sit at a table like this. Jean-Luc smirked. He raised his glass. To family, Mr. Carter, and to your generosity. He drank. In French, he muttered into his glass. To the idiot who is paying for my freedom. I drank my water. I watched them swallow the expensive wine. I watched them gorge themselves on the food I was paying for. I watched them preen and posture, thinking they were the kings of the world, thinking they had tricked the dumb American. They had no idea that the dumb American understood every single word. They had no idea that every insult was a nail they were hammering into their own coffins. I looked at the check sitting on the table near Richie's hand. The fake check. $3 million. They were staring at it. Their eyes kept darting to it. It was the only reason they were tolerating my presence. It was the carrot. I decided to dangle it a little longer, so I said, "Tell me about the wedding plans. What is the menu?" Genevieve sighed. "Oh, William, it is exquisite. We are starting with foie gras, followed by a duck confit. It is a traditional menu from the Lorraine region." "From the region of your ancestors?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "From the time when my great-grandfather served the king." In French, she whispered to Pierre, "My great-grandfather was a butcher in Lyon, but this idiot believes anything." I nodded. "Wow, a butcher for the king. That is impressive." Vanessa kicked me under the table. "Dad, stop talking. You are embarrassing me." I looked at her. Her face was flushed. She was ashamed of me. She was ashamed of the man who had paid for her teeth, her clothes, her education. "I am just trying to make conversation." "Sweetie," I said. "Well, don't," she snapped. "Just sign the papers. Let's get this over with." The cruelty was casual. It was easy for them. It was a habit. They didn't even realize they were doing it anymore. They thought I was an object, a resource, not a person. I finished my chicken. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin. "You know," I said, "I was thinking, since we are all family now, maybe I should learn French. It would be nice to understand what you are saying to each other. Pierre choked on his wine. He coughed, his face turning purple. Genevieve patted him on the back, looking alarmed. "Oh no, William," she said quickly. "English is the language of business, the language of the future. There is no need for you to struggle with French. It is a very difficult language for older people to learn." In French, she added, he would sound like a cow trying to sing opera. I smiled. "You are probably right," I said. "I should stick to what I know." "Driving trucks and writing checks." "Exactly," Jean-Luc said. "You have a special talent for writing checks, Mr. Carter. You should focus on your strengths." He placed the contract in front of me. He uncapped a fountain pen. It was a Mont Blanc, probably stolen or bought on credit. "Sign here," he said, pointing to the line. "And here, and then we can all go celebrate." I looked at the paper. I looked at the pen. I looked at their faces. Greedy, expectant, hateful. I picked up the pen. The humiliation was over. The dinner was done. The appetizers were finished. It was time for the main course, and I was about to serve them a dish they would never forget. The heavy Mont Blanc pen felt cold in my hand, a weighted instrument of execution. Jean-Luc hovered over my shoulder, like a vulture waiting for the animal to stop twitching. On the table, the contract lay open, a thick stack of cream-colored paper bound with a silk ribbon. It looked elegant. It looked official. It looked like a death warrant for my bank account. "Just sign right there, Mr. Carter," Jean-Luc said, tapping the signature line with a manicured fingernail. The line was marked with a little sticky flag. He was trying to rush me. He was trying to bypass the reading part. I pulled a pair of reading glasses from my breast pocket. They were cheap drugstore magnifiers, the kind you buy for $5 at a gas station. I put them on slowly, deliberately, adjusting them on my nose. I saw Genevieve roll her eyes. I saw Pierre check his watch. "Hold your horses, son," I said, my voice slow and gravelly. "My daddy taught me never to sign anything I did not read, even if it takes all night." Jean-Luc let out a breath that sounded like a tire leaking air. "Mr. Carter, please. This is standard boilerplate. It is exactly what we discussed. A family trust. To protect Vanessa. To protect the assets." Richie leaned forward. His elbows rested on the table, invading the Laurent's personal space. "Actually, Jean-Luc, my client, prefers to be thorough. We are talking about $3 million. That is a lot of miles on the highway. Let him read." I bent my head over the document. I started to read. And as I read, the blood in my veins began to boil hotter than radiator fluid in July. This was not a trust. This was an abduction. Article 4, Section B stated that the trustee, which was listed as Jean-Luc Laurent, would have sole discretionary power over the allocation of funds for lifestyle maintenance. Lifestyle maintenance. That was a fancy way of saying he could spend my money on gambling hookers and vintage wine without Vanessa having a say in it. I looked up. "Lifestyle maintenance," I said, pointing at the words. "That sounds important. Does that cover my trucks?" Pierre scoffed. "Trucks? Why would it cover trucks? It covers the necessities of their station, William. Housing in the appropriate arrondissements. Travel. Wardrobe. One must maintain appearances." In French, he muttered to Genevieve, "He thinks we are going to buy tires with his money. The man is a peasant." I went back to the paper. I turned the page. The paper crinkled loudly in the silence. Article 7 caught my eye. It was buried in a paragraph of dense legal jargon, the kind designed to make your eyes glaze over. It granted the trustee power of attorney over any future inheritances or liquidations of the beneficiary's familial assets. I froze. I read it again, just to be sure. They were not just coming for the $3 million. They were coming for the trucking empire. They knew. Somehow they suspected there was more, or they were just casting a wide net, hoping to catch whatever else I might leave behind when I died. If I signed this, Jean-Luc would effectively control Vanessa's inheritance before I was even in the ground. He would have the legal right to sell my fleet, my depots, my land. My hand tightened around the pen. The plastic barrel creaked. This part here, I said, tapping Article 7. It says something about future assets. What does that mean? Vanessa sighed loudly. She slammed her hand onto the table, making the silverware jump. Dad, come on! It just means if you leave me your house in New Jersey or whatever, Jean-Luc can help me manage the sale so I do not have to deal with it. He is good with business. You are making a scene over nothing. Good with business. The man owed 200,000 euros to a casino and was renting a fake life. I looked at my daughter. Her face was flushed with wine and irritation. She was not looking at the contract. She was looking at her reflection in the darkened window, adjusting a stray lock of hair. She did not care what she was signing away. She just wanted the money. She just wanted the night to end so she could go back to pretending she was royalty. You trust him that much, Sugar? I asked. You trust him with everything, even the things I built with my bare hands. She rolled her eyes. Yes, Dad. I trust him. He is my husband. Well, he will be in 2 days. Unlike you, he understands how wealth works. He knows how to invest. He is going to turn your little nest egg into something real. Jean-Luc puffed out his chest. Exactly. I have opportunities, Mr. Carter. Private equity. Emerging markets. Your 3 million will be 10 million in 5 years. I looked down at the paper again to hide the look in my eyes. If I looked at him now, I might reach across the table and strangle him. 10 million. He would turn 3 million into 0 in 3 weeks. I kept reading. Article 9. In the event of a dissolution of marriage, the assets within the trust remain under the control of the trustee as compensation for administrative services rendered. I almost laughed out loud. It was a prenuptial agreement in reverse. If they got divorced, he kept the money. He kept everything. He was charging her an administration fee for stealing her inheritance. I looked at Richie. He had read the draft earlier. He gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. He knew. He knew this document was the smoking gun. It proved intent. It proved malice. It proved they thought I was a brainless ATM. I turned the page again. Oh, for God's sake, Genevieve snapped. She lost her composure. The mask slipped. William, this is ridiculous. We have a reception to attend. People are waiting. You are reading this like a child learning his alphabet. Sign the damn paper. In French, she hissed. If he takes 1 more minute, I am going to scream. He is doing this on purpose. He is too stupid to understand it, so he stares at the words, hoping they will make sense. Just grab his hand and make him sign it. I looked at her. I lowered my glasses. I am just a slow reader, ma'am, I said. Big words confuse me. Jean-Luc stood up. He walked behind my chair. He put his hands on my shoulders. His grip was firm, too firm. It was a threat disguised as a massage. Mr. Carter, we are all family here. We all want the same thing. We want Vanessa to be happy. Do you want Vanessa to be happy? Of course, I said. Then sign, he said. Sign and show her that you support her. Show her that you are not just a truck driver, but a father who can provide. Show her that you belong at this table. The manipulation was clumsy, but it was effective. He was weaponizing my insecurity. He was telling me that the only way to be a good father was to be a silent banker. I looked at Vanessa. She was glaring at me. Her eyes were hard. Dad, if you do not sign this right now, I am leaving, and you will never see me again. I mean it. You are ruining everything. You are proving them right. You are proving that you are small. Small. I built a company that moves 10,000 tons of freight a day. I employ 400 people. I have stared down blizzards and hurricanes and economic crashes. And my daughter sitting there in a dress I paid for was calling me small because I wouldn't let a grifter pick my pocket. The tension in the room was a physical weight. Pierre was tapping a spoon against the table, a rhythmic metallic ticking that sounded like a bomb countdown. Genevieve was gripping her wineglass so hard her knuckles were white. Jean-Luc's breath was hot on my neck. They were desperate. They were terrified. They needed this signature like a drowning man needs air. If I didn't sign, the loan sharks in Nice would break Jean-Luc's legs. If I didn't sign, the landlord of the fake castle would evict them. If I didn't sign, their house of cards would collapse. I looked at the signature line again. I leaned forward. I placed the tip of the pen on the paper. Ink bled into the fiber, creating a small black dot. Jean-Luc exhaled. I felt his shoulders relax. Vanessa smiled a triumphant, greedy smile. Finally, she whispered, "I wrote the letter W, the first letter of my name." Then I stopped. I lifted the pen. "Is there a problem?" Pierre barked. "Why did you stop?" I looked at the pen. I frowned. "This pen," I said. "It feels light. Is it real gold or is it plated?" Jean-Luc stiffened. "It is solid gold, Mr. Carter. It is a family heirloom." "Is it?" I asked. I turned the pen over in my fingers. I saw the small scratch on the barrel. I saw the base metal underneath the gold plating. It was a fake, just like everything else in this room. Just like the castle. Just like the title. Just like the love they claimed to have for my daughter. I put the pen down. "I cannot sign with this," I said. "It does not feel right." "Use your own pen," Vanessa shouted. She stood up. "Use a crayon for all I care. Just sign the paper, Dad. Stop torturing us." I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the desperation in her eyes. But it wasn't desperation for my love. It wasn't desperation for my presence. It was desperation for the lifestyle she thought she was entitled to. She was willing to sell me down the river for a seat at a table that was made of sawdust and glue. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out my own pen. It was a cheap Bic ballpoint, blue ink, the kind you buy by the box. I clicked it. The sound was loud in the silence. Click. I hovered the pen over the paper. Jean-Luc leaned in closer. "Do it," he whispered. "Change her life." I looked at the contract one last time. I looked at the clauses that would strip me of my dignity, my legacy, and my self-respect. I looked at the words that reduced 40 years of blood and sweat into an administration fee for a French conman. I took a breath. "You are right, Jean-Luc," I said. "I should do what I do best." I pressed the pen to the paper, but I did not sign my name. Instead, I drew a single thick diagonal line across the entire page, from the top left corner to the bottom right. I pressed down hard so the paper tore slightly. Then I drew another line in the opposite direction, forming a giant X over the text. The sound of the tearing paper was like a gunshot. Jean-Luc pulled back as if I had burned him. "What? What are you doing?" he stammered. I stood up. I pushed the chair back. I picked up the contract. "I am editing," I said. I ripped the page out of the binder. I crumpled it into a ball. Vanessa screamed. "Dad, what are you doing?" "That is a legal document." "No, honey," I said. I dropped the ball of paper onto the empty plate in front of me. "That is trash." The room erupted. Pierre was shouting in French. Genevieve was gasping for air, clutching her pearls. Jean-Luc looked like he was about to faint. But I wasn't done. I looked at Richie. He handed me the other folder. The real folder. The one with the truth. I cleared my throat. The sound silenced them. You wanted me to sign a contract, I said. My voice was calm, cold, and hard as asphalt. You wanted me to transfer my assets. You wanted to manage my lifestyle. I tossed the new folder onto the table. It slid across the linen and hit Jean-Luc's wine glass, making it ring. I think we should talk about your lifestyle first, Jean-Luc, I said. Especially the part about the 180,000 euros you owe to the man in Nice. Or the part about the chateau being a rental. Or the part about your parents being bankrupt. I looked at Vanessa. She was frozen. Her mouth was open. Happy wedding day, sweetheart, I said. I brought you a gift. It is called the truth. Jean-Luc's face went the color of ashes. He looked at the folder. He looked at me. And in that moment, the arrogance died. The nobility died. All that was left was the rat caught in the trap. And I was the cat. And I was hungry. Pierre Laurent stared at the folder on the table as if it were a bomb that had just started ticking. His face was a mask of flushed indignation, the veins in his neck bulging against his tight collar. He looked at Richie, and then he looked at me, and then he made the mistake of opening his mouth one last time in his native tongue. He turned to Genevieve and hissed in French, rapid and venomous. This American pig is bluffing. He does not know anything. He is trying to scare us because he is too cheap to pay. Do not look at the papers. Just call the police and have him removed. He is a peasant attempting to sit on a throne. I watched him finish. I watched his lips move. I watched the spit fly from his mouth in his agitation. I let the silence stretch out after he finished speaking. I let it hang there for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. I took a sip of the $20,000 wine. I swirled it in the glass. I looked Pierre dead in the eye. And then I spoke. Monsieur Laurent, I said. My voice was soft. It was not the gravelly voice of the truck driver. It was smooth. It was precise. It was the French of a man who had negotiated shipping contracts in the boardrooms of Marseille for a decade. The French of a man who knew the language better than the pretender sitting across from him. Monsieur Laurent continued in flawless French. I assure you I am not bluffing. And as for being a peasant, I find that the peasants are often the only ones who actually know the value of the land they stand on. Whereas you, my friend, are standing on quicksand. The sound that came out of Genevieve's throat was not human. It was a strangled gasp, a sharp intake of air that sounded like a seal breaking. Her hand flew to her chest, and her elbow knocked into her wineglass. The crystal-stemmed goblet, the one filled with the Romani Conti, tipped over. The dark red liquid spilled across the pristine white tablecloth, spreading like a gunshot wound, soaking into the fabric and dripping onto her Chanel lap. She did not move. She did not try to stop it. She just stared at me. Her eyes were wide, enormous, terrifyingly white in her painted face. Pierre's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish pulled from the water, gasping, drowning in the air. The color drained from his face so fast, it was like someone had pulled a plug. He went from red to a sickly gray in a heartbeat. Jean-Luc dropped his fork. It clattered onto his china plate, a harsh metallic ring that echoed in the dead silence of the room. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated terror. He knew. In that split second, he knew that the game was not just over. The game had been rigged against him from the moment I walked in the door. Vanessa was the last to understand. She looked at me. She looked at them. She blinked. Dad, she whispered. Since when? Since when do you speak French? Since 1985, Vanessa, I said in English. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table right next to the puddle of spilled wine. When I was building the European logistics network, when I was spending 18 hours a day in meetings with port authorities in Le Havre, You were a baby. You do not remember. But I speak it. I read it. And I understand it. I turned my gaze back to Pierre. I switched back to French. I understood when you called me a pig. I understood when you called my daughter a cow. I understood when you said you would put me in a corner at the wedding like a piece of broken furniture. Pierre began to tremble. His hands shook so badly he had to grip the edge of the table to steady himself. Monsieur Carter, he stammered. His French was suddenly weak, hesitant. It was a misunderstanding. A joke. We have a dry sense of humor in our family. A joke, I repeated. I reached into the folder Richie had tossed onto the table. I pulled out a document. It was a single sheet of paper with a bank letterhead. Is this a joke, Pierre? I asked. I slid the paper toward him. It slid right through the puddle of wine staining the bottom edge red. It is a notice of default, I said. From the bank in Lyon. The one that holds the mortgage on the dry cleaning businesses you used to launder money for the local syndicate. It says here that you are 3 months behind on the settlement payments. It says that if you do not pay by the 1st of the month, you go to prison. Pierre stared at the paper. He did not touch it. He looked at it as if it were radioactive. How did you get this? He whispered. I bought it, I said. He looked up at me. His eyes were glassy. You what? I bought the debt, Pierre, I said. I called the bank this morning. Richie handled the transfer. It cost me pennies on the dollar, really. They were happy to get it off their books. They thought it was a bad loan. But I told them I knew the debtor personally. I leaned back in my chair. I smiled. It was a shark's smile. I am your creditor, Pierre. I own you. I own your debt. I own your past. And right now I hold the keys to your future. If I want to, I can make a phone call and have the French authorities waiting for you at Charles de Gaulle when you try to fly home. I can have you arrested for fraud before dessert is served. Genevieve began to weep. It was a soft, pathetic sound. She covered her face with her hands, her diamond rings clicking against each other. Please, she sobbed. Please, William. We are family. Family. I laughed. It was a harsh sound. 10 minutes ago, I was a peasant. 10 minutes ago, I was a wallet. Now I am family because I have my hand on your throat. I turned to Jean-Luc. The prince, the consultant, the gambler. He was shrinking in his chair. He was trying to make himself small, invisible. He was sweating. Beads of perspiration were rolling down his forehead into his eyes. And you, I said. I pulled another paper from the folder. A spreadsheet. 180,000 euros, I said. To a Mr. Petrov in Nice. A very impatient man, Mr. Petrov. I spoke to his associate today. Jean-Luc let out a whimper. A high-pitched sound like a kicked dog. No, he whispered. You spoke to them, I did, I said. I told them that Jean-Luc Laurent was about to come into a large inheritance. I told them that he was marrying the daughter of a wealthy American trucking magnate. Jean-Luc's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. You vouched for me? He asked. I shook my head. No, son, I said. I told them that the wedding was off. I told them that the trust fund was a lie. I told them that you have no access to my money. And I told them that you were currently in Paris at L'Ambroisie drinking $20,000 wine while you owed them money. Jean-Luc's face went white. He looked at the door as if he expected Mr. Petrov to walk in right then and there. Why? he croaked. Why would you do that? They will kill me. Because you tried to steal my company, I said. You tried to steal my legacy. You looked me in the eye and lied to me. You made my daughter believe you were a king when you are just a jester with a gambling addiction. I looked at Vanessa. She was sitting perfectly still. She was pale like a statue. Her hands were in her lap. She was staring at Jean-Luc. She was looking at him as like she had never seen him before. She was looking at the sweat on his lip. She was looking at the fear in his eyes. Vanessa, I said gently. She turned her head slowly to look at me. Her eyes were empty. The arrogance was gone. The snobbery was gone. There was only shock. I have one more thing for you, I said. I reached into my breast pocket. I pulled out a small black velvet box. It looked like a ring box. Vanessa frowned. She looked confused. I didn't buy you a ring, I said. You have enough jewelry. I opened the box. Inside was a key. A simple silver key with a Dior logo keychain. You were upset about the dress, I said. You were upset that the card was declined. You were upset that the staff looked at you like you were a thief. She nodded dumbly. Well, I said. I fixed it. I placed the key on the table. I bought the store, I said. Vanessa's jaw dropped. You bought the dress. Number 1, I said. I bought the store. The franchise rights for the location on Avenue Montaigne, the one you were at. I called the holding company this morning. It was a distress sale. They were looking to liquidate. I made an offer. I pushed the key toward her. I own the building, Vanessa. I own the inventory. I own the employment contracts of the women who cut your card in half. She stared at the key. She reached for it. Her fingers trembled. So I can have the dress, she asked. Her voice was small, hopeful. It was the voice of a child who thinks she can still get ice cream after burning down the house. I covered the key with my hand. No, I said. I looked her in the eye. I bought the store so I could fire them, I said. And I bought the store so I could ban you from it. Ban me, she whispered. Yes, I said. You are banned, Vanessa. You are banned from that store. You are banned from using my name in this city. You are banned from my accounts. You are banned from my company. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I paid $300,000 for a wedding that is not happening. I paid $50,000 to buy your fiancé's debt just so I could hold it over his head. I paid $5 million to buy a retail store just to make a point. I buttoned my jacket. I looked down at them. The ruined family, the fake aristocrats, and the daughter who thought she was too good for the man who made her. Pierre was weeping openly now. Genevieve was staring into the spilled wine. Jean-Luc was shaking. Richie stood up. He closed his briefcase. He looked at me and nodded. We are done here, Bill, he said. I looked at Vanessa one last time. You wanted a fairy tale, I said. Well, here is the ending. The carriage has turned back into a pumpkin. The horses are mice. And the princess is on her own. I turned my back on them. I walked toward the heavy oak doors. I heard Vanessa's chair slide back. I heard her footsteps running after me. Dad. She screamed. Dad, wait. I did not stop. I pushed the doors open. I walked into the main dining room. The diners looked up. They saw a man in a gray suit walking with purpose. They saw a lawyer with a briefcase. And they saw a girl in a white dress running after them, tears streaming down her face. Dad, please. She grabbed my arm. She dug her fingers into my sleeve. Everyone is looking. Please, do not leave me here. They have no money. Jean-Luc has no money. How will I get home? How will I pay the hotel? I stopped. I looked down at her hand on my arm, the hand with the diamond engagement ring that I now knew was probably fake or unpaid for. I gently removed her hand. Figure it out, I said. But I have nothing, she sobbed. You cut my cards. You canceled the transfer. I have nothing. You have your lineage, I said. You have your nobility. You have your sophisticated in-laws. Ask them. They are broke. She shrieked. You know they are broke. You just destroyed them. I didn't destroy them, Vanessa, I said. I just turned on the lights. They destroyed themselves, and you helped them. You were ashamed of me. You were ashamed of the work that paid for your life. I leaned in close. You said oil and water do not mix, I said. You were right. I am the oil. I fuel the engine. You are just water, and you just evaporated. I turned away. I walked out of the restaurant. I walked out into the cool Paris air. The rain had stopped. The stars were out. I heard her screaming my name behind me. I heard the maitre d' asking her to lower her voice. I heard the door close. I walked to the waiting car. Richie held the door open for me. I got in. I sat back in the leather seat. I took a deep breath. It was over. The lesson was delivered. Richie got in beside me. He tapped the partition. To the airport, he said to the driver. We pulled away from the curb. I did not look back. I did not look at the window of the restaurant. I knew what was happening inside. I knew the panic that was setting in. I knew the accusations that were flying. I took out my phone. I opened my banking app. I looked at the balance. It was lower than it was yesterday. A lot lower. But I felt richer than I had in years. Did I go too hard? I asked Richie. Richie looked at me. He loosened his tie. You bought a Dior store bill, just to ban her. That is biblical. That is Old Testament. She needed to know. I said. She knows, Richie said. Believe me, she knows. You didn't just burn the bridge. You nuked the river. I nodded. I closed my eyes. I was tired. Bone tired. But as the car sped through the streets of Paris heading back to the private jet that would take me home to my modest house in New Jersey, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had lost a daughter, but I had reclaimed my dignity. And sometimes you have to lose something to find yourself again. I was Bill Carter, truck driver, and I was going home. I stood by the open door of the black Mercedes, the engine idling with a low hum that sounded like a growl in the quiet Paris street. I had shaken Vanessa off. I had turned my back. But the rats were not done scurrying. They were not ready to let the ship sink without trying to claw their way onto the lifeboat. The heavy doors of the restaurant burst open again. It wasn't just Vanessa this time. It was the whole pack. Jean-Luc stumbled out first, looking like a man who had been punched in the gut. Pierre and Genevieve followed, their faces masks of panic and running mascara. They looked like a grotesque parade of failed ambitions spilling out onto the sidewalk under the streetlights. Mr. Carter, wait, Jean-Luc shouted. He ran toward me, his arms outstretched. Please, we can work this out. The debt, the 180,000. We can make a payment plan. I have prospects. I have a deal closing next week in Zurich. I stopped. I didn't get in the car yet. I leaned against the frame and crossed my arms. I looked at him. I looked at the sweat staining the collar of his expensive shirt. I looked at the panic in his eyes. He wasn't worried about losing Vanessa. He wasn't worried about losing his honor. He was worried about his kneecaps. Mr. Petrov in Nice was not known for his patience. "You want a payment plan?" I asked. "Yes. Yes, exactly." Jean-Luc panted, stopping a few feet away. He didn't dare come closer. "Just a bridge loan. Until the wedding. Until I get back on my feet." I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "There is no wedding, Jean-Luc," I said. "And you are not getting back on your feet. You are going to be crawling for a long time. But since you brought up the debt, let us discuss collateral." "Collateral?" He blinked. "You owe me money," I said. "I own your debt note, and right now you look like a flight risk, so I am calling the loan." I extended my hand. "Palm up." "The watch," I said. Jean-Luc froze. He instinctively covered his left wrist with his right hand. The watch was a Patek Philippe, or at least it looked like one. It was probably the only asset he had left that wasn't leased or stolen. My watch," he stammered. "Give it to me," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the night air like a knife. "It is a down payment. Unless you want me to call Mr. Petrov right now and tell him you refuse to pay." Jean-Luc looked at me. Then he looked at the phone in my other hand. He trembled. Slowly, painfully, he undid the clasp. He took off the watch. He handed it to me. His hand was shaking so bad, he almost dropped it. I took it. I looked at it under the streetlight. It was heavy. Real gold. Probably bought with the deposit from another conned father-in-law. I slipped it into my pocket. "And the keys," I said. "Keys. The Porsche," I said. "The silver 911 you drove to my house in Jersey. The one you leased under a shell company that I also happen to have a lien on now because I bought the debt from the leasing agency this morning." He stared at me. His mouth hung open. You bought the car note too." "I bought everything, Jean-Luc," I said. "I told you. I know logistics. I know how to encircle an enemy. Now give me the keys. You are walking home." He dug into his pocket. He pulled out the key fob. He held it tight for a second, his knuckles white. It was the symbol of his fake success. The symbol of the speed he used to run away from his failures. He dropped it into my hand. I tossed the keys to Richie, who was standing by the trunk of the Mercedes. "Have the car picked up, Richie," I said. "Sell it for parts. Now get out of my sight." I turned to get in the car. But that was when the explosion happened. It wasn't a physical explosion. It was the explosion of a man who had lost everything and needed someone to blame. And he couldn't blame me. I was too big. I was too powerful. So he turned on the only person smaller than him. He turned on Vanessa. She was standing there, shivering in her white dress, her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. She looked at him with pleading eyes. She was waiting for him to comfort her. She was waiting for him to say that they would get through this together, that their love was stronger than money. "Jean-Luc," she whispered. "What do we do?" He looked at her, and his face twisted into a snarl that was pure, ugly hatred. "What do we do?" he mocked her. "We. There is no we, you stupid cow. Look at what you did. Look at what your father did to me." Vanessa flinched as if he had hit her. "Jean-Luc!" "Shut up!" he screamed. His voice echoed off the stone buildings. "You useless American trash! You told me he was stupid. You told me he was a checkbook with legs. You said he would sign anything. You said he was desperate for your approval." "I didn't know," she sobbed. "You didn't know anything." He yelled. He stepped toward her aggressively. "You walked around like a princess, spending money you didn't have, bragging about your daddy, the truck driver. I only tolerated you because of the money. Do you understand?" I looked at your face every morning, and I forced myself not to vomit because I thought there was a payout coming. I stopped getting into the car. I watched. I wanted to intervene. The father in me wanted to step in and crush him, but the teacher in me knew she had to hear this. She had to hear every single word. This was the medicine. It was bitter, but it was the only cure for her blindness. Vanessa stood there, her mouth gaping open, her eyes wide with shock. It was as if he had ripped off a mask and revealed a skeleton underneath. You don't love me," she whispered. "Love you." He laughed. It was a cruel, manic sound. "I love caviar. I love fast cars. I love not going to jail. You are just a ticket, and now the ticket is expired. You are nothing. You are worse than nothing. You are a debt." He spat on the ground near her feet. Pierre and Genevieve stepped in then, but not to defend her. "You idiot!" Pierre shouted at Jean-Luc. He shoved his son. "You let him do this. You let the American outsmart us. I told you to get the signature before dinner. I told you not to let him read it. Do not blame me." Jean-Luc shoved his father back. "You were the one drinking the wine. You were the one insulting him to his face. You arrogant old fool. You tipped our hand." "Stop it!" Genevieve screamed. She grabbed Pierre's arm. "Stop fighting. We need to fix this. We need money. William." She turned to me. She ran to the car window. She banged on the glass. "William, please." She begged. Her dignity was gone. Her nobility was gone. She was just a desperate woman in a stained dress. "Do not leave us like this. We have nowhere to go. The hotel will evict us tonight. We have no flight home." I looked at her through the glass. I didn't roll down the window. I just stared. Vanessa was standing in the middle of the sidewalk alone. Her family, her fiancé, her in-laws were tearing each other apart like rabid dogs fighting over a scrap of meat. Jean-Luc was shoving his father. Genevieve was clawing at the car door. They were screaming in French and English, a cacophony of greed and blame. And Vanessa was silent. She looked at me. Our eyes met through the tinted glass. I saw the realization hit her. I saw the moment her heart actually broke. Not because I cut her off, but because she finally saw what she had bought with my money. She saw the rot. She saw the ugliness. She looked at Jean-Luc, who was now screaming obscenities at his own mother. She looked at her dress, the symbol of her vanity. She took a step toward the car. She mouthed the word, "Dad." I put my hand on the door handle. I hesitated. This was the moment. I could open the door. I could let her in. I could save her from the cold and the shame. I could take her home and we could pretend this never happened. But if I did that, she would never learn. If I saved her now, she would spend the rest of her life blaming me for ruining her wedding instead of blaming them for ruining her life. She needed to stand in the rain. She needed to feel the cold. She needed to find her own way back to the hotel. I took my hand off the handle. I tapped the partition. "Go," I said to the driver. The car pulled away smoothly. I watched them in the rearview mirror. I saw Jean-Luc trying to chase the car for a few steps before giving up and kicking a trash can. I saw Genevieve collapse onto the sidewalk. I saw Pierre holding his head in his hands. And I saw Vanessa standing there alone under the street lamp, a white figure growing smaller and smaller in the distance. She didn't run after me this time. She just stood there watching her safety net drive away. Richie looked at me. He didn't say anything. He poured 2 fingers of scotch from the crystal decanter in the armrest. He handed me the glass. I took it. My hand was steady. "That was hard, Bill," he said quietly. "Raising a child is hard, Richie," I said. "Saving them is harder." I looked down at the Patek Philippe watch in my hand. It was heavy. It was gold. And it was ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Time was up for the Laurents. But for Vanessa, the clock had just started. She had $0. She had no place to stay. She had no friends in Paris. She was about to find out what she was made of. Was she her father's daughter? Or was she just a passenger in her own life? I drank the scotch. "We head back to Jersey tonight," I said. "I have trucks to run." Richie nodded. "And the girl?" he asked. I looked out the window at the blurring lights of Paris. "If she is a Carter," I said, "she will find a way. If she isn't, well then she belongs here with them." The car sped up, merging onto the highway, leaving the city of lies behind. I closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. I just listened to the hum of the engine and waited for the plane that would take me back to the world where work meant something and a handshake was a contract. I was done with nobility. I was ready to get back to the mud. I settled into the back seat of the black Mercedes, and the leather creaked under my weight. It was a sound of finality, a period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. Richie sat next to me, and I could hear him exhale a breath he must have been holding for the last hour. The air inside the car was still and smelled of lemon polish and conditioned air, a stark contrast to the scent of rain and desperation outside. The driver put the car in gear. I saw his eyes flick to the rearview mirror, seeking instruction. "Drive," I said. My voice was gravel. "Do not stop." The car began to move, smoothly, silently, pulling away from the curb of the Place des Vosges. I did not want to look. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to keep my eyes forward, to focus on the road ahead, to forget the wreckage in the rear view. But I am a father, and a father always looks. I turned my head. Vanessa was standing exactly where I had left her, frozen on the wet pavement, like a statue carved from ice and regret. Her white dress, the one she had fought so hard for, the one that had cost her a relationship with me, was splattered with mud at the hem. It glowed ghost-like under the street lamps. She looked small, smaller than I had ever seen her. Even when she was a child, she had occupied space with her energy, her demands, her laughter. Now she looked like a paper doll that had been left out in the storm. Then she moved. The realization that I was actually leaving, that the threats were not just words, that the safety net was truly gone, finally hit her. It snapped the strings that held her up. "Dad," she screamed. It was a raw, primal sound. It penetrated the soundproof glass of the luxury car. She started to run. She ran in her high heels, stumbling on the cobblestones. She ran in the $20,000 dress that legally belonged to me. She ran past Jean-Luc, who was still screaming at his parents. She ran past the maitre d', who was watching with a mixture of pity and professional disdain. She ran toward my car. "Dad, please stop," she yelled. Her hands were outstretched, grasping at the air, grasping for the bumper, grasping for salvation. "Dad, I have no money. I have nowhere to go, please." The driver hesitated. He slowed down slightly. It was human nature. You see a young woman crying and running after a car, you slow down. I leaned forward. I said, "Drive," I growled. "Do not slow down." The driver nodded quickly and pressed the accelerator. The engine purred, a deep surge of power that widened the gap between us and her. I watched her through the tinted glass. She was running faster now, desperation fueling her legs. Her hair had come loose from its elegant updo and was whipping around her face. Her makeup was streaked, dark lines of mascara carving paths down her cheeks. "I am sorry," she screamed. "Dad, I am so sorry. I love you. Please open the door." My hand twitched on my lap. It would be so easy. It would be the easiest thing in the world to tap the glass to tell the driver to stop, to open the door and let her in. I could wrap her in my jacket. I could take her to the hotel. I could order her room service and tell her everything was going to be all right. I could fix it. I had the money. I had the power. I could fix anything. But fixing it would break her. If I opened that door, I would be teaching her that betrayal has no cost. I would be teaching her that she could spit in my face, and I would still wipe her chin. I would be confirming everything the Laurents believed about Americans, that we are soft, that we are foolish, that we can be used. And worse, I would be robbing her of the only chance she had to become a real person. She needed this rock bottom. She needed to feel the pavement under her feet, without a red carpet covering it. She needed to know what it felt like to be cold, to be hungry, to be alone. Only then would she understand what I had done to build the life she took for granted. So I did not tap the glass. I kept my hand on my lap. I clenched my fist until my nails dug into my palm. She was getting closer to the car for a second as we turned a corner, but then we hit a straightaway and the Mercedes pulled away effortlessly. She lunged forward, her fingers brushing the taillight, leaving a smudge on the red plastic. And then she fell. Her heel caught in a grate, or maybe she just gave up. She went down hard. She hit the wet street with a splash, her white dress billowing out around her like a collapsed parachute. She didn't get up. She just knelt there in the middle of the road in the rain, under the uncaring lights of Paris. She was alone. Truly alone. Jean-Luc was not running after her. He was back on the sidewalk trying to save his own skin, probably already plotting how to blame her for his debts. His parents were useless. Her friends were not here. Her credit cards were plastic scraps. Her hotel room was locked. She had nothing. She was wearing a dress she did not own. She was standing in a city where she did not speak the language, not really. She had no cash. She had no ride. She was 28 years old, and for the first time in her life she was completely and utterly destitute. I watched until we turned another corner and she disappeared from view. A small white dot swallowed by the gray city. I turned back around in my seat. I let out a breath that shook my entire body. I felt like I had just cut off my own arm. "You okay?" Bill Ritchie asked softly. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking out his window, giving me dignity. "No," I said. My voice was thick. "I am not okay. That is my little girl, Ritchie. She needed it," he said. "I know," I said. "I know she needed it. But it doesn't make it feel good. It feels like hell." "It is supposed to feel like hell," he said. "That is how you know you are a good father. A bad father wouldn't care. A weak father would have stopped the car. You are a good father, Bill. You are doing the hard work." I rubbed my face with my hands. My skin felt rough. "She has the return ticket," I said. "I didn't cancel her flight home. It is in her email." Ritchie nodded. "She will figure it out. She has a phone. She has legs. She will get to the airport. It might take her a day or two. She might have to sleep in a lobby or pawn those earrings you gave her, but she will get there." "And if she doesn't?" I asked. The fear was a cold worm in my gut. "Then she isn't a Carter," Ritchie said firmly. "But she is Bill." I saw her eyes back there. She was scared, yes, but she was also angry. Anger is good. Anger is fuel. She will use it. I hoped he was right. I prayed he was right. I pulled my phone out. I wanted to check if she had called. I wanted to see if she had texted. But I knew I couldn't answer. Not yet. Not tonight. Tonight she had to sit in the dark. I looked at the screen. Nothing yet. She was probably still crying in the street. I put the phone away. I looked at the empty seat next to me. The seat where she should have been if things had been different. If she had been grateful. If she had been kind. But she wasn't. She was a snob who tried to erase me. I closed my eyes and listened to the hum of the tires on the asphalt. I thought about the miles I had driven to pay for that dress. I thought about the lonely nights in motel rooms to pay for that ring. I had paid my dues. Now it was her turn to pay hers. The car merged onto the highway heading toward the airport. The city lights began to fade behind us. "Goodbye, Vanessa," I whispered to the empty air. "I hope you find yourself out there. Because the girl who walked into that restaurant is dead. And the woman who walks out, well, I hope I get to meet her someday. But not today. Today I was just a truck driver hauling a heavy load of grief back to New Jersey. And the road was long. The morning mist hung low over the lake, curling around the reeds like smoke. It was quiet. The kind of quiet you can't buy. The kind of quiet that doesn't exist in Paris or New York. I cast my line out. The lure hit the water with a soft plop, sending ripples outward. Richie sat in the folding chair next to me. He had a beer in the cup holder, even though it was 10 in the morning. He was retired now, mostly. After the Paris job, he said he had seen enough excitement to last him a lifetime. "Any bites?" Richie asked. "Not yet," I said. "They are thinking about it. Fish are smart. They don't just jump at the first shiny thing they see. They wait. They assess." We sat in silence for a while. It was comfortable silence. The silence of two men who know where the bodies are buried. "It has been 6 months," Bill Ritchie said. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the bobber floating on the gray water. "Have you heard from her?" I reeled in a little bit just to give the line some tension. "I got an email yesterday," I said. And Richie asked. I didn't answer it, I said. "Not yet." Richie nodded. He took a sip of his beer. "What did it say?" he asked. "It was short," I said. "She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for a plane ticket. She just said, 'Happy birthday, Dad.' And she attached a photo. A photo of what?" "A pay stub," I said. Richie laughed. A soft chuckle that scared a duck nearby. "A pay stub," he said. "From where?" "A diner in Queens," I said. "The Rust Bucket. It is a greasy spoon on Northern Boulevard. She is pulling double shifts. Waitressing." "Waitressing," Richie said. "Vanessa Carter, the girl who wouldn't wear anything that didn't have a designer logo, is slinging hash in Queens." "She is," I said. "And she is good at it, apparently. The manager told my private investigator she is the hardest worker he has. She shows up on time. She doesn't complain. She takes the extra shifts when the other girls call out." The investigator, Richie asked, "You are still having her watched?" "I am a father, Richie," I said. I cut her off. I didn't stop caring. I just need to know she is safe. I need to know she is eating. I am not interfering. I am not helping. But I am watching. And she is living where Richie asked. "A studio apartment in Astoria," I said. "4th floor walk up. No doorman. No view of the Eiffel Tower. Just a view of a brick wall and a fire escape. She pays the rent herself. Cash. Tips." Richie shook his head. "That is a hell of a turnaround, Bill. 6 months ago she was sipping $20,000 wine and calling you a peasant. Now she is serving coffee to guys who look exactly like you." "That is the point," I said. She needed to meet the people she despised. She needed to serve them. She needed to understand that the guy in the work boots isn't dirty. He is tired. He is the backbone of the world. And she needed to learn that a dollar isn't just a piece of paper. It is a unit of life. It represents time. It represents sweat. I looked out at the lake. The sun was burning off the mist, revealing the trees on the far bank. They were turning orange and red. Autumn was coming. "She wrote something else in the email," I said. "Yeah," Richie asked. "She said she was sorry," I said. "Not for the wedding, not for the money. She said she was sorry for being ashamed. She said she met a truck driver last week, a guy who comes in for breakfast every Tuesday. He reminded her of me. She said she talked to him, really talked to him, and she realized she had been looking at the world through a dirty window her whole life. Richie smiled. Sounds like she's growing up, Bill. She is getting there, I said. She isn't there yet. She still has some road to travel. But she is in the driver's seat now. That is all I ever wanted. What about the money? Richie asked. The 300 grand. The wedding fund. I reeled in the line. I checked the bait. It was still there. I spent it, I said. Richie raised an eyebrow. You spent it. On what? A new boat. A vacation. No, I said. I set up a scholarship fund. A scholarship? Richie asked. The William Carter International Exchange Program, I said. It is for the children of long-haul truckers, specifically for kids who want to study foreign languages and culture. Richie started to laugh again. This time it was a real belly laugh. He slapped his knee. You are kidding, he said. You set up a fund for truckers' kids to learn French. I smiled. It was the first time I had really smiled in 6 months. Why not, I said. Why should the Laurents of the world be the only ones who speak the language of diplomacy? Why should culture be gated by a bank account? I want the next generation of blue-collar kids to be able to walk into L'Ambroisie and read the menu right side up. I want them to be able to look a snob in the eye and tell him to go to hell in perfect Parisian French. That is beautiful, Bill Richie said, wiping his eyes. That is poetic justice. It is investment, I said. I am investing in dignity. We fell silent again. The water lapped against the hull of the boat. It was peaceful, and the Lawrence Richie asked, Whatever happened to the royalty? I cast the line out again. It flew high and far, landing in the deep water. Scattered to the wind, I said. Pierre is in a minimum security prison in Lyon for tax fraud. Turns out I wasn't the only creditor he stiffed. Genevieve is living with her sister in a small flat in Marseille. I heard she is selling her fake jewelry on eBay. And Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc is in the wind, I said. Last I heard, he was washing dishes in a hostel in Belgium. Mr. Petrov, the lender in Nice, has a long memory. Jean-Luc has to keep moving. He will be running for the rest of his life. Richie nodded. So you won, he said. I looked at him. Did I asked. I looked down at my hands. They were old hands, spotted, scarred. They had held steering wheels and gear shifts and baby bottles and contracts. I didn't do this to win, Richie, I said. You don't beat your children. You raise them. Sometimes raising them means lifting them up. Sometimes it means knocking them down so they can learn how to stand up on their own. I lost my daughter for a while, I continued. I lost the little girl who used to think I hung the moon. But I think I might be getting a woman back. A real woman. One who knows the value of a hard day's work. One who knows that respect is earned, not inherited. I checked my phone. The email was still there. Happy birthday, Dad. I tapped the reply button. I typed 2 words. I am proud. I didn't hit send yet. I would wait. I would let her work a few more shifts. I would let her survive the winter on her own. I would let her build a little more muscle. But I would send it. Eventually. I put the phone away. I got a bite. The tip of the rod dipped. The line went tight. I stood up. I braced my feet against the deck. I started to reel. It was heavy. It was a fighter. Got one, Richie yelled. Yeah, I said. I got one. I pulled. The fish fought. It wanted to stay in the dark. It wanted to stay in the deep. But I was patient. I was strong. I reeled it in slowly, giving it line when it ran, pulling when it tired. It was a dance, a struggle, just like fatherhood. You hold on tight. You let go. You pull. You hope the line doesn't break. And eventually, if you are lucky and if you are patient, you bring them home. I pulled the fish out of the water. It was a bass, a big one. It thrashed in the net, shining gold and green in the sunlight. Beautiful, Richie said. I looked at it. It was fighting for its life. It was strong. It was beautiful because it was struggling. I reached into the net. I carefully removed the hook. I lowered the fish back into the water. Go on, I whispered. It stayed there for a second, stunned. Then with a flick of its tail, it shot back into the depths, back to the struggle, back to the life it knew. Why did you let it go? Richie asked. Because I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. It isn't ready for the dinner table yet. It has more growing to do. I sat back down. I picked up my coffee thermos. I looked at the sky. It was big and blue and endless. I was Bill Carter. I was a truck driver. I was a millionaire. I was a father. And for the first time in a long time, I was at peace. The road was still long, but at least now I knew who was driving. In the end, I realized that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or rented castles in France. It is measured in integrity and the calluses on your hands and the peace in your heart. The Laurents chased an illusion and lost everything. I stuck to my roots and kept my dignity. To anyone watching who feels undervalued or judged by appearances, hold your head high. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's inability to see it. And to parents, don't be afraid to let your children struggle. It is in the struggle that they find their strength and ultimately themselves. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments, would you have forgiven Vanessa sooner, or did she need the tough love I read every single one? See you in the next video.